The Heroes of Olympus, Book 4, The House of Hades, by Rick Riordan. Chapter 64, Percy.
Iapetus!
Hyperion bellowed.
Well, well, I thought you were hiding under a cleaning bucket somewhere.
Bob lumbered forward, scowling.
I was not hiding.
Percy crept toward the right side of the doors. Annabeth sneaked toward the left. The Titans gave no sign of noticing them, but Percy took no chance. He kept riptide in pen form. He crouched low, stepping as quietly as possible. The lesser monsters kept a respectful distance from the Titans, so there was enough empty space to maneuver around the doors, but Percy was keenly aware of the snarling mob at his back. Annabeth had decided to take the side Hyperion was guarding, on the theory that Hyperion was more likely to sense Percy. After all, Percy was the last one to have killed him, in the mortal world. That was fine with Percy. After being in Tartarus for so long, he could barely look at Hyperion's burning golden armor without getting spots in his eyes. On Percy's side of the doors, Cryo stood dark and silent, his ram's head helmet covering his face. He kept one foot planted on the chain's anchor and his thumb on the up button. Bob faced his brethren. He planted his spear and tried to look as fierce as possible with a kitten on his shoulder.
Hyperion and Cryos. I remember you both. Do you, Iapetus?
The Golden Titan laughed, glancing at Cryos to share the joke.
Well, that's good to know. I heard Percy Jackson turned you into a brainwashed scullery maid. What did he rename you? Betty?
Bob, snarled Bob.
Well, it's about time you showed up, Bob. Cryos and I have been stuck here for weeks. Hours,
Cryos corrected, his voice a deep rumble inside his helmet.
Whatever, Hyperion said. It's boring work, guarding these doors, shuffling monsters through at Gaia's orders. Cryos, what's our next group anyway? Double red, said Cryos.
Hyperion sighed. The flames glowed hotter across his shoulders.
Double red. Why did we go from A22 to double red? What kind of system is that?
He glared at Bob.
This is no job for me, the Lord of Light, Titan of the East, Master of Dawn. Why am I forced to wait in the darkness while the giants go into battle and get all the glory? Now, Cryos I can understand. I get all the worst assignments,
Cryos muttered, his thumb still on the button.
But me? Hyperion said. Ridiculous. This should be your job, Iapetus. Here, take my place for a while.
Bob stared at the doors, but his gaze was distant, lost in the past.
The four of us held down our father, Uranos, he remembered. Koios and me, and the two of you. Kronos promised us mastery of the four corners of the earth for helping with the murder. Indeed, Hyperion said, and I was happy to do it. I would have wielded the scythe myself if I had the chance. But you, Bob, you were always conflicted about that killing, weren't you? The soft Titan of the West, soft as the sunset. Why our parents named you the Piercer, I will never know. More like the Whimper.
Percy reached the anchor hook. He uncapped his pen and riptide grew to full length. Cryos didn't react. His attention was firmly fixed on Bob, who had just leveled the point of his spear at Hyperion's chest. I can still pierce, Bob said, his voice low and even. You brag too much, Hyperion. You are bright and fiery, but Percy Jackson defeated you anyway. I hear you became a nice tree in Central Park. Hyperion's eyes smoldered. Careful, brother. At least a janitor's work is honest, Bob said. I clean up after others. I leave the palace better than I found it. But you do not care what messes you make. You followed Kronos blindly. Now you take orders from Gaia. She is our mother, Hyperion bellowed. She did not wake for our war on Olympus, Bob recalled. She favors her second brood, the giants. Cryos grunted. That's true enough. The children of the pit. Both of you hold your tongue. Hyperion's voice was tinged with fear. You never know when he is listening. The elevator dinged. All three Titans jumped. Had it been 12 minutes? Percy had lost track of time. Cryos took his finger off the button and called out, Double red! Where is double red? Hordes of monsters stirred and jostled one another, but none of them came forward. Cryos heaved a sigh.
I told them to hang on to their tickets. Double red! You'll lose your place in the queue.
Annabeth was in position, right behind Hyperion. She raised her draken-bone sword over the base of the chains. In the fiery light of the Titan's armor, her death mist disguise made her look like a burning ghoul. She held up 3 fingers, ready to count down. They had to cut the chains before the next group tried to take the elevator, but they also had to make sure the Titans were as distracted as possible. Hyperion muttered a curse.
Just wonderful. This will completely mess up our schedule.
He sneered at Bob.
Make your choice, brother. Fight us or help us. I don't have time for your lectures.
Bob glanced at Annabeth and Percy. Percy thought he might start a fight, but instead he raised the point of his spear.
Very well. I will take guard duty. Which of you wants a break first? Me, of course, Hyperion said. Me, Cryo snapped. I've been holding that button so long my thumb is going to fall off. I've been standing here longer, Hyperion grumbled. You two guard the doors while I go up to the mortal world. I have some Greek heroes to wreak vengeance upon. Oh no, Cryos complained. That Roman boy is on his way to Epirus, the one who killed me on Mount Othries. Got lucky he did. Now it's my turn. Ugh! Hyperion drew his sword. I'll gut you first, ramhead.
Cryos raised his own blade.
You can try, but I won't be stuck in the stinking pit any longer.
Annabeth caught Percy's eyes. She mouthed, 1, 2. Before he could strike the chains, a high-pitched whine pierced his ears, like the sound of an incoming rocket. Percy just had time to think, uh-oh. Then an explosion rocked the hillside. A wave of heat knocked Percy backward. Dark shrapnel ripped through Cryos and Hyperion, shredding them as easily as wood in a chipper.
Stinking pit.
A hollow voice rolled across the plains, shaking the warm, fleshy ground. Bob staggered to his feet. Somehow the explosion hadn't touched him. He swept his spear in front of him, trying to locate the source of the voice. Small Bob the kitten crawled into his coveralls. Annabeth had landed about 20 feet from the doors. When she stood, Percy was so relieved she was alive, it took him a moment to realize she looked like herself. The death mist had evaporated. He looked at his own hands. His disguise was gone too.
Titans, said a voice disdainfully. Lesser beings, imperfect and weak.
In front of the doors of death, the air darkened and solidified. The being who appeared was so massive, radiating such pure malevolence, that Percy wanted to crawl away and hide. Instead, he forced his eyes to trace the god's form, starting with his black iron boots, each one as large as a coffin. His legs were covered in dark greaves, his flesh all thick purple muscle, like the ground. His armored skirt was made from thousands of blackened, twisted bones, woven together like chain links, and clasped in place by a belt of interlocking monstrous arms. On the surface of the warrior's breastplate, murky faces appeared and submerged. Giants, cyclopes, gorgons, and drakens, all pressing against the armor as if trying to get out. The warrior's arms were bare, muscular, purple, and glistening, his hands as large as crane scoops. Worst of all was his head, a helmet of twisted rock and metal with no particular shape, just jagged spikes and pulsing patches of magma. His entire face was a whirlpool, an inward spiral of darkness. As Percy watched, the last particles of Titan essence from Hyperion and Cryos were vacuumed into the warrior's maw. Somehow, Percy found his voice. Tartarus. The warrior made a sound like a mountain cracking in half. A roar or a laugh, Percy couldn't be sure.
This form is only a small manifestation of my power, said the god, but it is enough to deal with you. I do not interfere lightly, little demigod. It is beneath me to deal with gnats such as yourself.
Percy's legs threatened to collapse under him. Don't, go to any trouble.
You have proven surprisingly resilient,
Tartarus said.
You have come too far. I can no longer stand by and watch your progress.
Tartarus spread his arms. Throughout the valley, thousands of monsters wailed and roared, clashing their weapons and bellowing in triumph. The doors of death shuddered in their chains.
Be honored, little demigods.
said the god of the pit.
Even the Olympians were never worthy of my personal attention, but you will be destroyed by Tartarus himself.